In this video, we're going to use the Chat GPT API to give us structured data about images that we're going to send to it. And I wanted to look at this example in particular because I think it's a good illustration of something that is a little bit annoying to do inside of Bubble right now. And we'll see why that is as we get further into this video. But this is going to be a continuation of my last video in which we spoke about how to stand up your own Node.js Express backend and why you might want to do that as a Bubble developer in order to overcome some of Bubble's limitations. So if you haven't watched that video, I'd recommend pausing this one and going back to watch my previous video. I'll include the link for that in the description. So really quickly, before we get into this demo, quick course plug here. I'm making a course. If you're interested in any of the stuff that I'm making videos about and you're interested in going deeper, make sure to join the waitlist. The link for that is in the description, and I'll be releasing more information about everything that I'm up to soon. And I'm also available for coaching sessions. So if you want to schedule some time one-on-one with me, the link for that is also in the description of this video. Without further ado, let's dive into this tutorial. Okay, so here's what we're going to build. The user's going to come to our app. They're going to upload an image of a meal that they've had recently, and we're going to take that image, send it to the Chat GPT API, and get a response in which this AI will tell us what ingredients are detected and how many calories were in that meal. Before we do any sort of building, let's actually go to ChatGPT and just try to get it to solve this problem from within this web interface. So I'm going to upload an image from my computer. I have one downloaded here for this honey garlic chicken meal that we'll use. And we'll say, I want you to tell me about this image. Your response should be a JSON object only. I want it to look like this. This is one thing that I love to do when I'm planning out my prompts, is actually just going to the web interface and getting it to work inside of this interface before writing the code for it. So we'll say ingredients detected. Ingredients. Let's just say array of strings. We'll tell it more about what the format we want, and we'll say estimated calories. We'll say number. Let's see how it does with this. Okay, it didn't for some reason format it nicely inside of that code block, but it looks like a valid JSON response. Cool. Estimated calories 550. Okay. This is great. This is exactly what we want to do just via their API, right? And the reason that we want to do this, you're often going to get into a situation like this when you're dealing with the Chat GPT API or really any sort of AI where you want to send some sort of unstructured data to the API, get that AI to make sense of it and put it into some sort of structured format, most often JSON, and then return that to you as the developer so that you can work with that JSON and do whatever you're going to do with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this set up in the API connector first and look at how that's going to work. So I'll create a new API called OpenAI, and let's create a call. We'll call this getMealInfo. And we'll use an action here. We'll make a post request. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a post request to this chat completion endpoint here. Now, when we make a request to this endpoint, we should pass this content type application /JSON header. And we obviously need to pass a request body here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. By the way, if you're just seeing this for the first time and you don't know how to use the API connector inside of Bubble, I have a whole playlist series about API connections in general, really, but more specifically how to use the API connector in Bubble. And you can go watch that. It's on this YouTube channel, and it'll help sort you out when it comes to the API connector. Let's go ahead and add a few different things to the body of this request. We're going to add this model key. And now we need to add this messages array. So let's just copy this whole thing and paste it there. And role developer. So let's write our system prompt here. I guess they renamed the system prompt to developer. I know that we just wrote out a prompt that worked reasonably well inside of the web API, or the web interface rather. But let's change this a little bit. So we'll say you are a nutritionist. I think that's how you spell that word. The user will send an image of a meal they just had. Your task is to look at that image and determine what ingredients are in the image, as well as estimate how many calories the user just consumed. Your response should be a valid JSON object with the following keys: calories, or let's say estimated calories, which will be a number, and ingredients detected, which will be an array of strings. Okay, now for this user part, this user message, the content key, can either be a string or an array. And I think in our case, we want to have an array that will contain an image. So let's do that. We're going to send, instead of the content here being a string, we're going to send an array. And this is going to get really annoying because building JSON inside of here is super annoying, because you can see that like jumps to the next line, and then I have to indent the space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy what we have right now. We're going to go over to cursor and build this JSON body in here. Request body.json. If you are just watching this video and you haven't seen the last one, this is the simple Node Express app that we set up in the last video. So you can go and watch that last video to get to where we are right now. But I'm going to create a new JSON file, and we'll paste this in. And for here, what do I want to do? I want this to be an array of objects, array of contents, first defined. I believe that we just want to say, yeah, look at that. My code corrector already knew what I was trying to do. So that looks good. I'm going to replace this URL with that image that we just uploaded to Chat GPT. And I also uploaded it to Bubble. So that is this honey garlic chicken thing here. Let's just copy the full URL. Oops. And we'll paste that here. Okay, so now that we have this request body, oh, there's one more thing actually that we want to add in, which is important. And that is going to be this response format, which is an object. So let's add that down here. Response format, and it also knows that that's exactly what I was trying to do. So this response format, it tells the Chat GPT API that we want a JSON object back, right? And what's important is we've described in our system prompt here that we we want a valid JSON object returned. We've shown these keys right here that we want, and we've defined in the response format key here that we do want a JSON object as well. So hopefully when we send this off, we get a nice JSON object returned to us. So let's just paste that in here. And last but not least, I got to put in my API key. Let me go and grab one of those. Okay, so we'll add a private, I think it's a bearer token. Let's just go check quickly. Yeah, so we'll send a bearer token in the header. And let's initialize this and see if that works. It's taking its sweet time, but there we go. So here's the response that came back. And you can see if we look at this content that was returned to us right here, it looks like it did it perfectly, right? We've got this JSON here, and you can see that we have two keys, estimated calories. It gave us that back as a number, 550. And it gave us this other key called ingredients detected, which is an array of strings there. And it looks like it got it pretty accurate. Broccoli, let's see what it guessed. It guessed chicken. I think, yeah, well, it is chicken, honey garlic chicken. Okay, nice job, Chat GPT. Now, here's the problem with this, is that Bubble doesn't know what to do with this content, right? It doesn't really recognize that this is JSON. If we come up here, we should be able to see this. It's just treating the entire thing as a string because it's being returned as a JSON string, right? But the problem is if we want to use this inside of our Bubble application, and this is a really simple example, but you can imagine think of like a resume or something where there's tons and tons of different fields that we would need in a structured way to deal with. It's unhelpful to treat this as a string. And I think there are some plugins that have been built by people. I haven't really tried any of them myself to deal with this problem of basically dealing with JSON inside of Bubble on the front end. But a much easier approach, instead of doing this, would be to reroute this API call that we just made through our Node Express app, and then parse the JSON inside of our backend app in Node, which will take one line of code, and then send that structured JSON back to Bubble. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense, and let's go ahead and do that right now. So what we're going to do is, instead of making a call to API or to OpenAI directly here, we'll make a call to our backend. And we can delete this file now. And let's create a new file called, let's just call it for now, get meal info. And we'll say, I want to make a call to OpenAI. I want to pass in the following body. Let's just copy what we had over here. I want to parse the JSON returned. We'll see how well it knows what the response is from OpenAI because we're not giving it any context here. We're just attaching the request body. Say I want to parse the JSON returned and return that as a response, or return that from this function. So let's change this a little bit. I want to create a function that will make a call to OpenAI. I want to pass in the following body, blah, blah, blah. I want to parse a JSON return and return that from this function. Let's say this should be an exportable function too. So we're going to build this function in here, export it so that we can use it in other parts of our code. And let's see how Chat GPT, or how, I guess this is Claude, Let's see how it does with this. So it's using Axios, which is fine. We could use the SDK that OpenAI provides, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of this example. Axios, if you don't know, is just a popular library for making HTTP requests. So we've got our axios.post there. We're not going to use the vision preview, so it got that wrong. And I think it otherwise just got everything right. Cool. Message.content. So let's go ahead and try this. What we'll do is, I think this will still just give us back a JSON string, but anyways, we'll deal with that in a second. That should be fine. We're not going to use the vision preview. We'll use GPT-4o. Yeah, it's weird that I gave it that entire body and it still changed the model to the vision model, but that's okay. I think this looks good. Let's see what happens when we call it. So inside of here, actually, you know what? Before we do any of that, let's just test this setup from inside of here. So we've got Axios. If you haven't installed Axios, I don't know if I have here, but let's just say npm install Axios. There we go. And you should see it in your package.json there. There it is. And so this function takes in an image URL. So let's just say const image URL equals, and let's go grab that image URL from here. And we'll run get meal info, pass the image URL in. Once that promise is resolved, we'll take the response and we will log it. And the response from this function should just be response.data.choices, first item in choices, the message content, which is essentially, whoops, well, we got rid of this and have to initialize it again, so that won't work. But anyways, let's run node get meal info.js. Invalid API key. That's right. I need to plug in my API key here. We're not going to talk about, I'm not going to add an env file or talk about anything like that right now. I'm just going to add in my API key that I added in over here. And let's go ahead and run this. And there we go. Estimated calories, ingredients detected. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so far so good. So this is what's coming back from this function. And all we need to do then is we can get rid of this image URL and that function call, because what we're going to do is we're going to call this in a different part of our code. So we're exporting this entire function, get meal info, and we'll go back to our app.js file. We're going to come in here and let's just say that the image URL is exactly that. So we'll say the image URL is going to come from the request body from a key called image URL. And then what we'll do is we'll import that function that we just created. Const get meal info equals require get meal info. You can see how good these auto completion tools are becoming inside of Cursor. Like, it's way ahead of me already in terms of what I want to do. But we've imported that function, and then we're going to say meal info equals await get meal info from the image URL, and then we're just going to send the response from Chat GPT back to Bubble here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start our server. And we've already got an ngrok tunnel running, but some review from the last video. If you have ngrok installed, you can just run this command to start an ngrok tunnel. And then we're going to go back here and we're going to change this entirely. So instead of sending a request to OpenAI, let's go ahead and delete this. And we'll just send it to our local server. So we'll send a post request. We can still call it get meal info because why not? And what we'll do, really the only thing we need to send in the body of our request is going to be this image URL, I believe we called it. Yep. rec.body.image URL. And let's go ahead and just use this same one. We'll make this dynamic actually. There we go. And I think that should work for us. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we're getting this same thing returned to us right here, which is this JSON string, which is no good. We want to change that because the whole point of this was now because we get this JSON string back, we should be able to parse it and send back actual JSON that Bubble can recognize here. So I think all we need to do is exactly that. Const parse meal info equals json.parse meal info. And we'll send that back. And let's try again. There we go. And now you can see, I don't really love how we're sending this meal info object like that. Instead, I think what we can do is we can just send back res.json parsed meal info to just have those two keys in the main object there. There we go. So estimated calories and ingredients detected. And now what we can do is we can use this like we would any other API response inside of Bubble, right? So if I save this, let's just really quickly go ahead and make this functional. And we'll say when this image uploader value changed, I'm not going to worry about much of the UI here, but let's say when this file uploader image changes, let's say, what did we call it? Get meal info. And we're going to pass the image URL, which of course is going to come from this file uploader. So we'll say, and I think like for some reason, when you say this file uploader's values URL, Bubble leaves out the first part of it that is HTTPS with the colon there, and it just returns the first two forward slashes. So I'm pretty sure we need to add that in. And once we get that back, let's just go ahead and send or store the response inside of this group called image uploaded. So we'll say the type of content here should be down because we've initialized that API call. It should be in get meal info. We'll leave this blank, but what we'll do is we'll say display data inside of group image uploaded, I believe we called. And we can just say the result of step 1. And I think, yeah, that should be good. So now here we can just say ingredients detected equals we don't really need this group, so let's just take that out of here. And we'll say ingredients detected is equal to parent groups get meal infos ingredients detected. And the calorie estimate will be parent group meal infos estimated calories. All right, let's give it a try. let's go find a meal images. Let's grab that. Okay, so I'm going to upload an image. We'll just take that one. And it's sending a request to our backend now. There we go. Roast turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing, green beans, red peppers, cranberry sauce. 800 calories. I don't know about that calorie estimate. That looks like, yeah, I don't know. That looks like more than 800 calories, I would say, but who knows? Anyways, that's besides the point entirely. So I hope that you found that helpful, both in terms of dealing with the Chat GPT API, but also in terms of how you can, again, step outside of Bubble, build your own Node Express server, and deal with a simple thing that we want to do here in this case, which is send a request to Chat GPT, get some structured data back, and not have to worry about taking that JSON string that Chat GPT gives you and having to kind of deal with that in Bubble, which can be quite painful. And you saw how easy it was to do it inside of this Node Express app. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.